I now have the pleasure of introducing today's webcast, Business Partner Series, ALA Means Business, Misperceptions on the Title and Role of the Legal Administrator. A special thanks to today's sponsor, ALA Legal Marketplace. Search for your next business partner on the ALA Legal Marketplace. That's at legalmarketplace.alanet.org or www.alanet.org. Your host today is going to be Sean Soth. Sean has more than 20 years of experience in event and media strategy and development. Sean manages the Association of Legal Administrators Business Partnership Team. With experience in over 200 conference programs, Sean and the ALA team are focused on helping ALA business partners engage and grow their business with ALA members and the firms they represent. Your panelists for today will be Katie Bryant and Deborah Ellsbury. Katie Bryant is the Executive Director for Udall Shumway, PLC. Katie has been employed by the firm from 2000 to 2005 and 2010 to present. She has been actively working in the legal field since 1998. Katie holds a BS degree in accounting with a minor in marketing, both from University of Minnesota Moorhead. She was a controller for an industrial distributorship for 3 years, after which she spent 2 years as a project manager for Omega Legal Systems, installing and training time and billing software throughout the United States. Katie is also an active member of the Association of Legal Administrators, both locally and internationally. Deborah Ellsbury began working for Brent Thurkill in 1995 and has served in the position of firm administrator since 2000. She attended Marion College and very proudly earned her Certified Legal Manager certification in November 2009. She is involved with the Association of Legal Administrators. She has been a member of the local chapter since 2003. And without further ado, I will hand our presentation over to your host.
Thank you, Regina. Okay, everyone, I think you can hear me. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I thought it'd be helpful to just very quickly review our presentation. Regina did mention that we will be sharing the webcast today in an archive through email tomorrow, but I thought it'd be helpful just to kind of review what we hope to cover. Talk a little bit today because we have some long-term business partners who are tuning in, as well as some new folks, brand new to ALA. We wanted to share a little bit more about who ALA is and talk a little bit about our largest event of the year. It's coming up here in May, our annual conference. We'll share a little bit about our pre-registration info so you and your teams understand who comes to ALA. We'll also share a little bit about our business partners from the survey results we had from last year. Those folks who attended the annual conference or any of our conferences get a post-conference survey at the end of the meeting, and we'll be using some of those statistics to share with you here on today's call. Then we're going to kind of dive in with Katie and Debbie, and the goal of that is really just to share a little bit about the landscape of legal administration and what roles legal administrators play at their law firms. And for those of you on the line, maybe you're in sales, maybe you're in marketing, either way, we want to help equip you with some information that your teams can use as they approach your legal clients in the months and, of course, the year to come. And at the very end, we'll have some time for Q&A and create some takeaways for everyone today for your teams. But mostly in the Q&A, as Regina had shared, if you'd like to present a question, we'll get to it throughout the webcast here. Just type and send to in your chat box there to all panelists. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the upcoming annual conference and expo, and of course, the Association of Legal Administrators. For those of you who don't know, ALA represents about 9,000 individual members from all shapes and size law firms across not only the United States but globally as well. We also have members in 90 chapters across the United States, different cities, different regions, and some folks that maybe don't affiliate with a chapter, we call those folks at-large members. Those folks report into 6 regions across the country, and many of you on the line, I see some of you here and recognize some of you that are participate with us at a regional level. Perhaps you participate with us at an international level, or maybe you do all of those and even the chapter levels. Important to point out that there's some wonderful opportunities at the chapter level, the regional level, or the international. It just sort of depends on what your goals are as a company and how your products and services are shared with the legal industry. This year, our annual conference and expo is at the Gaylord National Resort and Convention Center in National Harbor, Maryland, May 3rd through 5th. So it's coming up in just about 2 months. What I'm about to show you is just a quick glance at the pre-registration numbers. So what folks who registered early for the conference, keep in mind we still have about 8 weeks, but roughly this is 800, so about 2/3 of the folks that we anticipate. These are the statistics that those 800 shared with us when they registered for the annual conference this year. A lot of times we're asked, well, how many firms does that represent? So you can see here, out of 800 registrants, they come from about 600 firms. And we expect somewhere between 11 and just over 1,200, 1,100 and just over 1,200 total registrants. And when we count registrants, we're really only talking about the legal administrators who register to attend the conference. If you're a business partner on the line, we don't have business partner registration for our meetings. You have to be a legal administrator or exhibitor or sponsor to participate. But it's important that our overall shows nearly 2,000 total folks, but the pure registrants, the folks that you all are hoping to meet and learn from, we're anticipating between 11 and just over 1,200 folks this year. So a lot of folks are asking me, because we're in National Harbor, does that mean it's just going to be East Coast firms? No. Actually, we have a wonderful regional footprint, and I would anticipate that while our numbers will grow, these statistics based on the region that folks are from will probably stay pretty close to the same. You can see that just as of earlier in February, we have about 50% of our attendance coming from the East Coast, and then roughly the remaining half coming from Central and West. You may add up very quickly that this doesn't come up to 100%. So the 2% would come from perhaps the global audience, and that's something that is really interesting. We continue to grow globally. You'll see a number of different folks represented at the annual conference this year in National Harbor from all over the world, and I anticipate this list to actually grow a bit. But for those of you who do business internationally or work with firms that do business internationally, important to point out that we're continuing to see some growth globally with our attendees and membership. This is a big slide, and one of the reasons we're talking with Katie and Debbie today on the webcast. A lot of times, folks the misperception of just simply the word administrator when it comes to legal administration. They tend to think that perhaps that means they're not involved with the decision-making process when it comes to sourcing selections. That is in fact not the case. In fact, 80% of our members are responsible for making the final purchasing decision for their law firm, and 100% influence that. And I think you're going to see that many of the business partners who perform really, really well at our annual conference or have been there for a long while understand that as they're selling, as they're working on getting consensus, working in and understanding how administrators, what role they play in that decision making is really, really critical. And that's why they're there. They may attend other shows throughout the year, but we're happy to have them here. And a little later on in the webcast, we'll learn from Debbie and Katie what goes on at their law firms and in the industry specifically to legal administrators. A question we get a lot, and sometimes it's very hard to discern because it really depends on, the question a lot of folks will say is like, we only work with small firms, or we are only targeting large firms. Well, I guess it sort of depends on how you define small or large firms. So we break it down into kind of 5 little groups, and you'll get this slide to sort of take a gander at later in the archive. But you'll see that no matter what size firm your team is targeting, we have a great representation across the board. So we've got quite a bit of large firm this year. I think, DC is specific to that. But for those of you who are really targeting the small firms, we're incredibly powerful there too, and excited to have everyone. And I think one of the reasons that ALA has become such a great network for folks, no matter what size firm they come from, is they're just sharing new ideas. What's working in one place may work somewhere else. You'll see that in some cases, ALA members, if they switch jobs, they may go from one size firm to another and take ALA with them. So this is just a quick snapshot of the type, or the size of firm rather, that our attendees are coming from this year. Now this slide I'll share is interesting because a lot of times when someone asks me or says something like, hey, we don't really think we're doing business with legal administrators. We're really working on managing partners, or maybe we're working with the CIO or the CFO. Well, guess what? Sometimes those folks fold right on in here, not the partners, but the C-level folks into an ALA member. There's a lot of different size firms. There's a lot of different types of firms. And because of that, you're going to see a pretty diverse job title here in the statistics. So it's really difficult to put together, but right here we wanted to give you guys a snapshot of what is most common across our attendee base so far. And this is pretty close with membership in general too. I know I'm being specific about the folks that are going to National Harbor, but nice to point out that this is pretty indicative across the board for membership as well. I want to take a step to the side and share a little bit about the feedback our business partners provide to ALA. And this information comes from our ALA Annual Conference and Expo Exhibitor Survey. This came directly from last year's post-show survey, and specifically at annual conference. And so we asked, what is your average deal size? So per transaction, what is your goal per transaction? And you can see that it starts pretty high. I mean, the customer value here is quite good, and I think that's why a lot of folks like to work in legal. If you're just sort of getting started in legal and perhaps you work other verticals, you can kind of understand where the deal size may be by looking at this chart. One thing, though, that stood out to me, and I think we all need to get better at doing, is we still have almost 30% that don't know. They don't know what their average deal size is, and that just could be because, the survey goes to the folks that register for exhibiting. It may not go to all the sales team that comes to the show. But important, when you guys are planning your event participation over the course of the year, how granular are you getting with your return on objective? And with ALA, relationship is key, and consistency is key. So kind of being there for the long term is really pays off. But what we're seeing here is that we've got to help folks that maybe aren't quite sure what their sales goals may be prior to going to a show. We can help you there, so if you have a question on that and like to follow up after, happy to talk through it with you. But this just gives you a nice example of what some of the business partners are doing at annual conference. Now, I just came from an exhibit myself, and the first thing that everybody asks when you get back is like, okay, how many people did you meet? And at this particular show for us, we didn't have a whole lot of customer interaction, so we really had to make each one count. But this is a question that we do ask of our business partners. And this is one where they do get pretty specific. In this case, only 3% don't have the answer, but you could see some pretty awesome statistics. 57% had more than 100 customer interactions in the expo. And I realized that not all of those are going to be great in terms of high value or maybe high touch in terms of your sales pipeline, depending on how long your sales process is. But just the fact that you can meet that many people in an event that spans roughly 3 days is really great. ALA members are very interested in the business partners that are exhibiting at annual conference because a key part of their role will come from sourcing and how they manage those business partnerships. So interactions are really critical. This just kind of gives you, even if you, on the lower end, 20 to 50, boy, I would have loved to have that this past week, interactions. I think it's important to kind of understand how many folks you're talking to. I know that it's not quantity, it's more quality that everyone wants, but certainly good to know that, you know, from a visibility standpoint, you're able to meet people at this conference. Okay. How many interactions do you need to kind of achieve ROI? And what this question really is asking is, well, how many do you think before you put someone into your sales pipeline and in a meaningful way? And about 50% or exactly 50% of our audience will say somewhere between 10 and 20 plus. We need that many interactions. I think that the previous slide is doing a great job in showing that you can do that with ALA, but one of the things you just need to know in terms of your event planning period is if you kind of have an idea of how many people you're going to maybe meet at the booth, be thinking about with your sales team how many of those will equate or matter. What are you looking for to qualify into your sales pipeline? Because face-to-face is still the best way to accelerate that sales process, no matter if it's the first time you're meeting someone, the 5th time you're meeting them, whatever that may be. Conferences still give a wonderful window into helping you meet and engage folks. And it would cost you 10 times as much to meet outside of the office and travel to different parts of the country to meet these folks. So this is just what we do here at ALA, but an important step to take at any event that you may have. And we asked, hey, listen, in terms of your top performing conferences of the year, tell us where ALA ranks. And so 92% ranked the annual conference as their top or near their top of their performing meetings, which is great. The other meetings that a lot of folks mention are ILTA, Legal Tech, ABA Tech, handful with LMA, and there's a smattering. So there's some wonderful opportunities in the marketplace. And with ALA, what we're looking to do is really help you understand a little bit more about our legal administrators and how they can be helpful to you as you approach your clients in 2018. So with that, I am excited to have Debbie and Katie join me on this call and this webcast today. And we're just going to go through and ask them a couple of questions relative to the legal marketplace. And everyone, if there's something that, you know, perhaps your sales team has a question on or your marketing team has a question on that be helpful to ask Debbie or Katie, please go ahead and use the chat box. I'll do my best to circle back to that at the near the end of the webcast today. So our first question, and really I'm going to ask Katie to weigh in here. Katie, when someone talks about legal administration, can you tell the audience a little bit more about your day-to-day?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sean. So I just want to start off by saying that I never say that I take that back. Maybe early on in my career I would say I was a legal administrator, but I will say probably for the last 15 years when people ask me what you do, whether they're in legal or out of legal, I don't say I'm a legal administrator or I'm in legal administration, because inevitably it leads to the comment or question of, oh, are you a paralegal or a legal assistant or something like that, which are both great professions, but it's just not what we do typically. So what I like to say in terms of, you know, what we do is we manage and we lead the operations of our law firms or our legal departments or, you know, our sections within maybe a corporation. What we really do is we run the business side of these legal organizations. We're in the business of law is what, you know, I like to say, and that usually clears up the legal administration phrase. So what my point is I don't want you to get hung up on what ALA technically stands for, but rather just think of us as ALA. You know, we are a group of professionals who run the business side of our entities. And don't get hung up on the title of what we do either, which Sean touched on. I believe the last time we checked, we had over 900 different titles within ALA, so it really isn't going to answer too many questions for you as to terms of what that person is responsible for.
That's helpful, Katie. Thanks. And, you know, we've talked about this before. I mean, 900 titles is a great point to share. You know, with something like that, how you mentioned that legal administration really means managing that business side of law. And Debbie, I'll ask you this question next. In terms of that business side of law, what does that mean exactly in your experience? You know, when you're talking about managing the business side of the law firm, can you touch on that a little bit about what that may mean for you day to day?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My management responsibilities, and I think those of most of us who are in this great profession of managing law firms, we're ensuring the delivery of legal services by the non-billable staff. So we are in charge of the staff. We're also in charge of the efficiencies in the programs that make them productive. And so everything circles back to my office and to the office of all of the legal practice managers that don't involve, you know, the actual attorney work. So we're not directly related to the practice of law, but we are connected to every aspect that centers around that and makes that more profitable.
That's helpful. I wanted to ask you, in terms of the audience today, profitability. Well, I think it's our #1 member concern or member need when asked. Tell us a little bit more about the value legal administrators provide their firms in this area. Like, what are some of the programs you guys are responsible for when you're working with staff, and what does that look like from a profitability side of the house?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, please, Dave.
Here? I'll go ahead. What we provide, what we found in years coming up is that law firms no longer run as a profession. They're being run as a business. And so they've hired people like myself and Katie and the other 8,500 of us that belong to ALA to do that. And so for my particular firm, my day-to-day things is I'm handling the staff, so any of the HR issues that might come up. I'm using the software that creates an efficiency that allows me to manage all of that data in a comprehensive manner. The IT controls that are needed to be in place, the software that we need in order to run efficiently, all of that crosses my desk. So what we as administrators provide for our firm is the opportunity for the attorneys to be attorneys. We found that attorneys can graduate from law school without a working knowledge of any of these aspects of how to run the business of a law office. And so we are the gatekeepers of those day-to-day operations.
That's great. Thank you. You know, as we kind of go through, one of the things that we hope to share is just sort of the consistencies that legal administration has across the board. But I'm going to switch this question up a little bit because I think you guys have sort of already touched on what firm priorities are consistent. But for firms that maybe don't have an administrator, what are some of the things that they should be aware of that a great legal administrator can mean for their law firm? I mean, are there gaps in with firms that maybe don't have this role? Katie, could you comment on that?
Yeah, sure. I will just say, you know, to put it kind of bluntly and in a quick manner, is firms that don't have someone like Debbie or myself in a position that's managing the business side of things, in all likelihood, then it's one of the attorneys, probably the managing partner. But they are spending probably a great amount of time, which would translate into a great amount of billable time on things that they really could easily transfer to someone else who really probably knows a whole lot more than they do about running the business side of a law firm. But if you look at, you know, what an attorney bills per hour, and if you think about if they didn't have someone like Debbie or myself in a position that's managing the firm, the amount of time they would spend doing all of those tasks would cost them so much more than if they were able to concentrate on providing legal services to their clients or out getting, you know, more work. That, to me, if you can put those kind of numbers down for a law firm that doesn't have someone, that's really what's going to grab their attention and make them understand that, you know, I need someone in this position who does have all this knowledge in finance, HR, you know, business development, technology, you know, everything that happens within a business, like Debbie said, not just law firms, but a business. It will quickly translate to them realizing I can make a whole lot more money if I hire someone to do this type of work, you know, for me or the firm or the organization, whatever. Yeah.
Sean, can I expand on it a little bit?
Yeah, please.
I have always said that I think my job description should have a very small paragraph that says, while I am not responsible for the billable hours that are worked inside the office, I'm responsible for all the hard and soft cost of the money that comes in the door and goes out the door. So while I watch that like a bulldog, that's my job. And so I don't create money for the firm, but I sure am very responsible for how much money the firm has, because I determine what goes out the door, and I'm really responsible for what comes back in.
That's excellent. You know, a lot of times, just because we do so many trade shows in the legal industry and attend so many different programs through ALA, is a lot of times you'll meet attorneys, and the first question I'll say is, oh, have you ever heard of the ALA? And they'll struggle for a minute because there's a lot of alphabet soup in legal. You know, they might go, yeah, remind me again why who that? And I'll say, yeah, legal administration. And they'll go, their eyes will, oh, yes, and they know exactly who at their firm, even the big guys, you know, who's a member and how long they've been a member. It's always been a nice way to break the ice. So, you know, for our business partners on the line, you know, if you're working with, whether you're used to working with an ALA member, let's just say that, whether that person's an executive director, a legal administrator, or any other of the 900 titles that we have, you know, maybe today part of that is just how can we help you connect and understand the value that our members and people like our members bring to the table. If you know someone that sounds similar to what we're describing, you mention ALA. We sure would love the press. And again, we have some really great networks at the chapter, region, and of course the international level to help. And so let's move on this real quick, because you mentioned you know, smaller firms, I guess, or folks that maybe don't have a legal administrator, perhaps it's the managing partner working through the all the little details in finance and profitability issues on their own. But tell us a little bit more about how, and Katie, I'll start with you on this one. How do you work with your managing partners, and is that relationship one that's like on a how regular a basis? Is it, you know, you're talking with them on the regular, daily, or describe that a little bit for us?
Well, at my firm, I would say I interact with my managing partner on average probably daily. I like to go and just touch base and let them know kind of what went on, if anything substantial for that day. But I will say that in my firm, and I think this is the case for most firms, is nothing really gets in front of my managing partner in terms of a product, a service, you know, anything that a business partner might be trying to implement into my firm without going through me first. You'd have to be probably his brother or married to his sister or something like that. By me, I will say, but I mean, that's what he relies, or he or she, whatever that would be, but in my firm it's a he right now. That's what he relies on me for, is to, you know, kind of extrapolate those kinds of things and only bring to them, you know, solutions that have been vetted and products that have been vetted by myself or someone on my team appropriately. So I think the majority of our members, that is the case. You know, if we're not the decision maker, we're certainly a very, very strong influencer, depending on what it is that the product that would be used. Debbie, I don't know if that's, I think that's probably the case at your firm as well.
Absolutely. My managing partner is right next door. So I have a wall between us. I'm pretty sure I could tap Morse code and we could communicate that way. I talk to him, you know, on a daily basis, and if it's a particularly tough day, it may even be hourly, unfortunately, for both of us. But it's very much a teamwork atmosphere. He relies on me, just as Katie mentioned when she was saying what she was saying about her firm. If you cold call my office and you manage to get past my receptionist, which may be difficult to begin with, but if you do manage to get to the managing partner, he's not going to engage you in conversation. He's going to say, you need to talk to Debbie, and he will forward you to me. So, and I think that's probably the case with most firms. We are the gatekeepers.
Well, I appreciate that. One of the, you know, just to kind of continue down this thread, you know, one of the things that we hear about, if we're talking to, kind of put our business partners into two categories, and just in a general way, service providers, solution providers. And on the solution provider side, a lot of times sales teams, when they're positioning technology solutions, will really value the need to demo. And I look at that and I go, okay, are legal administrators sitting through the demo? Are they working with the IT team first? Are they creating channels like, hey, talk to the IT team first, then that'll come to me? Can you tell us, for the solution providers that may be listening to our webcast today, can you talk a little bit about how you work with IT, maybe not IT teams, but IT decisions? Debbie, let's start with you on this idea.
Well, I personally, in my firm, do not have IT staff. So I rely very heavily on my relationships with my business partners. And so I reach out to them. I see them as the subject matter experts. I say, here's my issue, here's my concern, or here's what I'm looking for. What do you suggest? I have a third-party IT company that, you know, then I communicate with, and okay, here's what I want to do. They do not solve my problem. I mean, they fix my problem, but they're not the one that's coming usually to me. I usually bring them the information of this is what I want and this is what I need. So not having on staff IT, those IT conversations start and stop with me. However, depending on what also might be involved, I will bring in different people within the office when maybe they are the particular end user. For instance, I've never been a legal secretary. I've never been a paralegal. I don't do legal research. So when it's something that comes along that's going to impact their daily life, I usually circle in other end users to go through the demonstrations with me. But in my particular firm, it starts and stops with me. And that's going to be the case probably with most firms that do not have on-staff IT departments.
Helpful. Katie, is your experience similar?
I would say in most instances, I do have an IT manager at my firm. But I will say, at least at my firm, most of the areas that I want him to research or dive into are coming, our products are coming from me to him. I'm not going to say that's necessarily how it is at all law firms. It's just how it is at my law firm. I will say, though, that you make an interesting comment about business partners finding the number of demos they do to be important at a show. I will just say from my point of view, I don't do typically demos at a show because frankly, I just don't remember. If I did all those demos, I just wouldn't be able to really delineate between, it would just all be a big blur to me, unless I was really already had done a bunch of research and maybe had some preliminary demos or something like that. So I'm really just interested in learning more about, the product and, the highlights. I don't really want a demo at that time. I think what you can give to me is your information and why you're a thought leader maybe in your particular, in your area. And then I will take that back and contact those, or, sometimes you guys contact me first, which is great, and then set up demos usually in my office where I can concentrate and I'm not limited by the amount of time so much as I have, because I'm a question person, so you might say a demo is going to take 15 minutes. There ain't no demo that's going to take 15 minutes with me. So I just choose not to do them at shows, and I go pretty much every year, but rather I try to figure out those of which I want to have a demo with later on down the road after the conference or the show. So that's just my perspective and in my experience as to what works best for me.
That's helpful and a nice segue into just the sourcing process. I mean, one of the things for our business partners on the line to consider is, when you're at shows, whether that's ALA or anyone else, any other show, understanding or having just a general awareness of the sales process is a great first step. And it could be as simple as, is my objective with this conversation to inform them, educate them? Where am I in my sales process with this person? And it may be that you're just getting started. I think, a lot of times, particularly with new folks, one of the things that we hear will be, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to close anyone. Well, you probably won't. I mean, it's the first step to getting that relationship started. And Debbie, I'll ask this one of you. So when you're working and the firm's considering something new, tell us a little bit about where your sourcing process starts when you're considering a business partner.
Well, if I'm fortunate enough to have the timing be where a conference is coming up, I will tell you that it's much like shopping. I browse. I walk through the exhibit hall. I'm looking for a particular type of software, a particular type of service. And I'm browsing, so I'm coming up to you and I'm saying, okay, what sets you apart? And I ask those kinds of questions. Like Katie, 90% of the time I'm not going to set through a demo because I, too, have a very short attention span. There's so much going on in an exhibit hall, it's very difficult for me to glean a lot out of it other than just the basics. I would say that the business partners at ALA have a few extra touches with me because that's the first place I go. Whether it's at my chapter level or it's at the regional level or it's at the international level, I look through those lists and I go, who offers this service? I'm not likely to Google it. I am very likely to ask my peers, who do you use? And so the referral from other ALA members is something that I value very much. A business partner could have 1,000 testimonials from people I don't know, and while they're great and I'll read them, having someone down the street go, well, this has been a great experience for me, will far outweigh those testimonials on a website. So I really do. My process starts with ALA 99% of the time.
We're fortunate to have a lot of folks that will share, hey, you know, we had a great show because this is our second year, or, you know, we have some folks that have been to every ALA conference. We have many that this is their first inroads with us. And I think we've talked about this offline, which is just, you know, being consistent with that messaging. And it sounds like, based on both of you sharing some of your thoughts here, is that thought leadership continues to be a real important piece. So business partners on the line, as you are preparing for our conference or any other, you know, what makes your team unique, not just in the way you manage the relationship personally, but what are you putting out into the industry article-wise or content-wise that is different and helps stand out. Katie, would you say that some of the content that folks are putting out is an important part of your process as well?
Absolutely. In fact, I consider myself somewhat of a veteran of the ALA Conference Business Partner Expo Hall. And a lot of times when I'm going into, you know, a conference, I'll come out of it having learned way more from speaking with various business partners about what they're looking at in the future, you know, what they're developing. I'll get more knowledge from that, more content, like you said, than I will maybe from those educational sessions that I chose for that year. I'm not going to say that's always the case, because I think ALA does a great job with their professional development. But there are several instances where I can, you know, I had light bulb moments, but it was because of interactions I had with business partners and the knowledge that they shared with me about what they knew and that I didn't know. And I think, you know, I don't, as a business partner, I would not underestimate the thought leadership you have in your area of expertise and sharing that and using that as a tool when you're interacting with the people at conference and our members. And I will just say that when I'm looking for something new, I immediately go to the ALA Business Partner list from ALA, from my chapter. And I will tell you, if I answer a cold call and my first question, if I don't know who that person is, are you an ALA business partner? Most times they are not, because it's a cold call, obviously, and I just say, well, call me back when you are. And I am not exaggerating. That's literally what I say in most instances. Call me back when you are. I give them the information, and that's how I source my business partners primarily. Is every business partner I work with an ALA business partner? I would say 90% are. The ones that aren't are because I don't have a solution in my city that can service my needs that is an ALA business partner at that time. So it's very, very important to me that someone is an ALA business partner.
That's helpful. I mean, I appreciate the relationship that both of you have with ALA. I think as a peer group, it's nice to know how important those relationships are. And folks that are on, I mean, if you are, whether your strategy is, you know, hey, we're a national company, we should be working with the international office, or hey, we're only doing business regionally, how should we approach this? Or hey, we're really, you know, we're in Tampa, and we're only in Tampa. How do we, you know, call us up, call our team up, ask for help there. There's plenty of wonderful resources at any of those levels that can fit the bill. So thank you guys for answering that. You know, a lot of folks, we're seeing so many new solutions, and I'm excited about some of the new groups that are going to be attending National Harbor that maybe haven't been part of ALA before, and of course we always have something new and unique from our legacy business partners. But a lot of folks will share with us in our calls that, hey, you know what, things are changing, and a lot of their customers just sort of wearing the hat of a business partner right now, you know, their customers are trying to be competitive. Their goal is also profitability, and part of that is how do we stay competitive to gain new clients. And so, Katie, I'll ask you this one. In terms of, you know, maybe not you specifically, but the firms and members that you are friends with or your network includes, is there something consistent that our business partners can point to help their customers if they're struggling in an area on client acquisition that maybe they need to consider?
Well, I will just say that for my firm, a key to staying competitive, I believe, is a lot of times has to do with the business partners we do business with, because they are often the ones who are looking far more into the future than even our own firms are, and therefore they have the knowledge that we don't necessarily have at that time, just because they are so concentrated in their area. You know, every firm is so different in terms of what they need to stay competitive. My firm, for the most part, is very consumer-based, so it's very different than what is needed for an insurance defense firm. But to me, any smart firm is really utilizing their business partners appropriately and capitalizing on the knowledge and the thought leadership that they have in order to stay competitive in legal services.
Thank you. That's great. And I think, you know, that sort of segues into this next question. And Debbie, I'll ask you to take this one. But, you know, we've heard a lot about ALA is about relationships. I think I've learned that in my few years with ALA, whether that's member to member, member to ALA, member to business partner. We really do all place a high value on relationships. You know, piggybacking on some of what Katie just shared when it comes to staying competitive, how can current business partners be a resource to the administrators they hope to work with? So, you know, if perhaps they're new and they're looking to break in with that cold call, and maybe you know, okay, they need to join ALA. Is there something else that has worked well when in terms of engagement with law firms that you've seen that you could share with the business partners on the line today?
Well, a little side tip is that if you are someone who's going to, you know, make some cold calls because you haven't developed those relationships yet, and you're trying to figure out how to get to the administrators. I know in my particular firm, and I know this is the case for several, to get past the gatekeeper, which is the receptionist in my office, because we do not have direct lines to our desks, so you have to go through my receptionist, is you need to say, I'm an ALA business partner. If you say you're an ALA business partner, you will get through to me. Otherwise, she'll say, well, you need to leave her a message or send her an email, and you know, if it's something she's interested in, she'll get back with you. So that's my little takeaway tip for those of you that are ALA business partners. The second thing I would say that I'm always looking for is, you know, bring me your subject matter expert in the beginning. Don't wait till I floundered a little while. If you can be that resource for me right off the bat, I have developed an affinity to you that if I can go back and look incredibly smart to my managing partner, if I can look incredibly smart to an executive committee, you know, that works well for both of us. So bring me that subject matter expert as soon as you can, which Katie touched on. And then Katie said something earlier, and I'm going to take her line, and she's going to ground here. But I think that the relationship part of this, you know, it's not something that happens overnight. I don't think you sign the dotted line and say, I'm now a business partner, I'm going to sit at my desk and wait for the phone to ring. It truly is a marathon, and it takes a while. For some of us, we may be in extended contracts. with our current provider, and even if we wanted to, could not make a change, but will 2, 3, 4 years from now when our contract is up. So sometimes it does take a little bit longer to develop those relationships, or the ROI. You develop the relationship, but the ROI may take a little bit longer than you'd hope. It's not like a one and done kind of thing.
Sean?
Yes.
Can I give some tips for annual conference for our business partners?
Absolutely.
Okay. I have a little list here. Go to the networking events. I am always astonished at the number of business partners who do not go to our networking events, such as, well, this year our welcome is actually in the marketplace, but in years past where you would only see maybe a handful of business partners at the welcome reception, and I am always flabbergasted that they don't attend those regularly and vigorously, we'll say, because that's when people are just kind of, you know, mingling and just chatting, and that's how, to me, relationships kind of start, is more organically, we'll say, rather than us walking down an aisle, you know, of a marketplace and it's starting there. The second thing I wrote down, and you're probably going to laugh at me, but it's go to the hotel bar. And I mean this wholeheartedly. I mean, there are a number of us, and especially those who are very active in ALA, who kind of gravitate to that central area at conference, which is oftentimes the whatever the main hotel is, the bar or lounge there. I can tell you one of my biggest business partners to this day is someone who I casually met, you know, sitting down at the bar with some other ALA members, and we've been doing business with them now for 7+ years. But I don't know that I ever would have met this person just walking through the marketplace. Thirdly is go sit in on our educational sessions if you can. It's always very impressive to me when I can speak to a business partner who has knowledge in the business of law, not just in their own area, because number one, it means that they're vested in wanting to learn about what we go through, or what our challenges and what we need to know on a day-to-day basis. You also never know who you're going to end up sitting next to at one of these educational sessions. So you may think of that as your downtime, but I would just say I would think your time would be better spent going to our sessions and, you know, learning what we're needing to learn. And then also possibly, you never know what interactive activity happens at these educational sessions as well. So that would be another tip. And like Debbie said, I mean, when people come up to your booth or whatever, you know, just present yourself as the expert in your area. Think of yourself as that thought leader who wants to partner with that member, with that firm, with that organization to form a win-win relationship. You know, maybe take that sales hat off a little bit, but rather, you know, let's have a dialogue as to the, you know, the things that you need help with, or that you're finding challenging, or that you're working with, and find the solutions that you can provide then to them. And that's part of the relationship building, like Debbie mentioned. And like she said, you know, if you can instantly give me something that I didn't already have in terms of knowledge or whatever it would be, I will have an affinity to you and will always remember you, whether it is at that particular time I'm needing whatever it is you have, whether my firm needs whatever your service or solution is at that time. And the last thing is...
well, I wanted to add to that, and plus, yeah, you know, the thing that I've seen at when we try to be as objective as possible when someone asks us for a sourcing, that's our role, is like, hey, you know, these are the opportunities to meet our business partners. We do have folks that will call our office and ask, who would you recommend here, who would you recommend there? and we steer everyone to, well, there's the event, there's the magazine, there's Legal Marketplace, there's other webcasts that we have. There's a million different ways to interact with ALA's audience, but there's also a lot of value in demonstrating to a member potentially, but keep in mind they have this wonderful network of close ties with other members at other firms, and they may not have an immediate need, but someone they know very closely may. We see that quite a bit. Have you guys had that in your experience at our show?
Absolutely.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, I think, you know, I'm sorry, you said you had a fourth point there too. Fifth.
Oh, yeah.
See, I'm not writing it down.
Yeah. The last thing that I wrote down is, you know, it's so nice as someone who goes to the conference every year for the most part to see the same faces. It's somewhat of a turnoff to me if there is a business partner who is there year after year, but the faces change every year as well, too. Because that means, to me, most likely it's going to be hard for me to form a relationship with that person and get to know them and them get to know my firm and myself. So I would just say if that's doable, that I think that would go a long way, because there are several of us who go consistently, and it's so great when you're like, I remember you from, you know, 3 years ago and blah, blah, blah. So whenever that's possible, I would really look at that as being one of your strategies, because I think it does make our members more comfortable in having a dialogue with someone that they at least recognize from either another show or, you know, a chapter or years past. So.
Yeah, we had we're going to get into some Q&A here because we do have a few questions, and everyone, we're going to go a hair over our time, but I do want to make sure we get some of these questions answered. You know, Katie, we had someone last year, one of the business partners said, you know what, I just had huge meetings in New York for a month. I met these same folks over the last month, and then they came to, last year we were in Denver. He said, you know that all three waited till Denver before they signed with me. And I think his point was, hey, we're consistent, we're here each year, we raise the flag, we want to be that go-to, and it mattered in that case. And of course, we're happy to hear that business is taking place at the annual conference. Guys, those are excellent points and things that we could put together for some key tips for the listeners here. You know, leading with your thought leadership first. You know, being consistent with your team and everyone. Even if your team, like let's say you have a chief salesperson, even if that person can't be at every meeting, because I know it's a lot. And ALA alone, we have you know, we have 5 meetings this year that you could participate in at a large national level. There are other ways for them to stay in front. You know, like our Legal Marketplace provides profiles that allows for all salespeople to be highlighted and even stratified by territory. So like if you have an East Coast rep, a West Coast rep, that kind of a thing. We've tried to build that dynamically to help our business partners approach the audience that way. So we've got a couple of questions coming in for our panelists here, Katie and Debbie. And we have one that's coming in from one of our great sponsors. They participate not only at a national level, but they also participate at a chapter level. And of course, you know, in some cases at the chapter level, they are potentially getting some objection, you know, and the objection may be, hey, we only buy local, and we're with our current supplier, but that sponsor doesn't, that supplier, maybe they're not even participating with ALA. Do you guys have any advice on how to tactfully approach that objection? So they've got an incumbent supplier, and that incumbent supplier isn't necessarily an ALA member, and of course they're at an ALA chapter event trying to do some business. is there a way to remain objective there and help move the needle?
Go ahead, Debbie.
Okay. Part of this is education at our chapter levels, and we're working really hard at having some conversation with our chapter members to look beyond their chapters and look at the business partners that are supporting at the international level and the regional level also. And, I mean, there are 90-some chapters, so it's very difficult for any business partner to sponsor every chapter. Probably, I don't know that we even have one that does that. So that's just not going to happen. I would encourage a conversation saying, you know, maybe they don't even understand or appreciate the fact that this particular business partner is a business partner at the regional or international level. So I would encourage these people to say, hey, I just want you to know, we do sponsor ALA. But just not at the chapter level because it's just cost prohibitive for us to do that at all, you know, 90-some chapters.
Sure, and I'll share from just a sales perspective that, and with this, in many cases, we get the chance to know our business partners, and in this case, for someone that's so wonderfully supportive, I think it's okay to be confident and equip your reps with the confidence they need to say, hey, listen, you know, I can appreciate that you have an incumbent supplier that you've been doing business with for a while and you're comfortable with. You know, if you ever want to talk about, you know, the value and differences of our firm, or perhaps you just share, hey, you know, we've learned a lot of times with the other ALA members that we're working with, that this is important to them, and highlight that value, because you've got wonderful peer influence. If you're working with ALA at any level, you have an opportunity to take that and apply it to some of the things that you're sharing, a salesperson to salesperson. And I'm happy to anyone that's listening, if you'd like to talk further about that, just on some of the strategies that we've heard that works, happy to take that offline and perhaps share. Another question that sort of came in here was, okay, what makes exhibiting at ALA conference unique from similar events? So I guess, and second part of that question is, what makes it different interacting with ALA's membership? And so, Katie, I'll ask you that. Like, in some of the other meetings you've attended, is there something unique about the ALA conference that maybe stands out?
Well, to me, you know, if we're comparing others, I assuming that person means like maybe ILTA or LMA, something like that. But, you know, ALA, the majority of us are we're big tent focused. So we're touching everything in our organizations. Whereas I would assume, and from my experience, those that are attending will say ILTA, you know, they're very focused on the technology solutions and services part of things, not necessarily the whole big tent picture. Same with LMA, they're more focused on the business development, client development, marketing type things, whereas that's part of our big tent picture. So to me, that's what makes ALA unique over the other ones, is that so many of us touch everything, and either we are the decision makers over everything, or we're at least a very strong influencer over all the different areas that encompass the business of law of a legal organization.
That's helpful. And I mean, would you guys say if someone's working with an IT team or a business development team, is it important for them to maybe share, hey, you know, how do you, is a good question to ask how those folks work with the legal administrator or the executive director, just to get an idea of what that communication may look like?
Yeah. You mean at the other show?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I'm a business partner and I'm working with the IT team or the business development. Usually it's not a team, usually it's a person, but either way, if I'm working in those areas, does it make sense to also ask the folks that we're working with, hey, can you help us understand a little bit more about how, you know, when you guys are looking through solutions, how do you work with the administrator, or how do you work with the executive director? I mean, just to kind of get a sense of what those conversations may look like to help them kind of build out their sales path a little bit.
I think having the question of what is, you know, the line of decision-making in your particular department or your particular firm or your place of employment, I think that's a fine question to ask. And I think what you're going to find many times is that the IT department, then the next stop is the firm administrator, the COO, the executive director, who are ALA members. There's my little commercial.
Well, thank you. Well, you know, I think we've reached we've gone over our time. It's been great to have you and everyone. Thank you. We have quite a few folks that have stayed on to listen and past the hour, and we're very appreciative of that. I wanted to take a moment and thank Katie and Debbie for joining us today, and all of you on the phone, whether you are listening and you're a longtime business partner or just getting started. If you need some help with your legal event and marketing programs and maybe how they're fitting into your sales approach, please don't hesitate to call us. You can search us online at www.alabp.org. That's ALABP, like businesspartner.org. And that today, I think, concludes our webcast.